Hello YouTube, welcome back to another video. Well, we're back with the Distressor off the back of the previous video that we did that you guys really enjoyed. That video did really well. There was a slight issue that a watcher pointed out at the very end when I was doing the vocals, the vocal shootout, the comparison, that I left one of the plugins on. The FG Stress from Slate Digital, which kind of screwed up the obviously the comparison in that moment. So we're back at it again with a vocal just like a little vocal melody, and we're gonna do the same shootout with the same plugins. But I thought rather than doing it the same way, we're going to do it a little bit different, and we see we've got the audio tracks right here, and I'm hiding the names on the right hand side here, which goes where, because I have a hardware print as well. So I've ran the audio through the real Distressor hardware and printed it back into Ableton here. I've used Access Analog. I've explained Access Analog. It's basically where you connect to their servers, and they've essentially replaced all the buttons and knobs on hardware with robots and then I connect to the server, and I can basically, in their kind of the plugin that they've developed, I can control and run my audio through the real life hardware, through their A to D to A converters, and then it will the server will bring it right back into my DAW, and I can print it. So I've ran it through real life Distressor hardware, okay? And we're going to compare the plugins now. So of course the Kai Distressor, we're going to give it another shot because I mentioned that I didn't like it last time, so we're going to listen to it again. And as I was setting this up, it was to my surprise that I was actually enjoying the sound a lot, or at least how it sounded on vocals. And also finally, a little bit to mention is that I just want to confirm with everybody watching at the bottom here, all the saturation section, which I guess emulates kind of the fatso saturation warmth, that it's off, okay? In the last video, I know I left the power on, but I did turn the actual circuits off, and I double checked in the manual that it didn't say anything about if the power switch is on, it will run it through it wouldn't affect the sound. They didn't mention, but for safety, for extra clarification, I'll turn it off as well. So this circuit, the section at the bottom, is completely bypassed. It's just the Distressor, the compressor section. And yeah, I don't think there's anything different. All the plugins are the same. The settings are the same, so we are reaching about an average of 3 to 4 dBs worth of compression, sometimes peaking 6 or 7, but around 3 to 4 dBs. Probably a little bit too much at times, but I have kind of done it on purpose to kind of so we can hear the compression a little bit more and get a bit more color from it. Ratio's 4:1, attacks on 5, releases on attacks on 4, releases on 3, and they are all LUFS matched as closely as possible to, I think it was like minus 13 dB LUFS, so they should be relatively gain matched as well. Likewise with the hardware, to so we can get as close, so there's not much of a volume difference, so we can get as the most accurate representation of the sound between the plugins and the hardware. And just on the Kai Audio Distressor plugin, we have 8 times oversampling turned on. I tried putting it on 16, but for some reason it was just janking up the sound a little bit. I don't know what was up with that, so it's more stable at 8. But yeah, I don't think there's anything else other than that to mention. We are going to be doing a bit of a blind test as well. I'm gonna use the Hoffer blind test plugin, and we're gonna jumble them around, and then we're gonna take a listen, and then we're gonna try and determine which one is the Key Audio, which one's the Slate, which one's the Distressor, and which one is the hardware. And let me know down in the comments below, guys, if you guys can tell the difference between the hardware versus the plugins and which one was your first pick, which one is your favorite. Okay, we had a lot of good feedback on the last video with you guys in the comments telling me what you liked, what you thought. So please do the same in this one. And if you want more videos like this, again, always please do let me know. Hit that like, hit that subscribe if you're not already. But yeah, let's just get straight to the video. I think what I'm going to do first is I will play the audio with the plugin bypassed, and then we can do the blind test. And at the very end, I can just show you all the plugins and which track has what plugin, and likewise with the hardware as well, so you guys can see it. And I'll bring up the plugin view as well up because I know you guys enjoy that as well. So yeah, enough of my rambling on because I can talk about this stuff for ages. Let's just get straight into the Hoffer blind test bit. I'll skip to the next part and we'll start listening to some audio. Okay guys, we've got Hoffer up and everything's ready to go, set up. I've hidden the tracks on the right hand side and the VU meters, so we don't know which one's getting soloed, and all you can see here is the master with an L2 on it, just so it doesn't just avoid any clips as I usually do. So as soon as I click start, it'll jumble and muddle, randomize all these up and hide the names, and then we can start to take a listen and pick our favorites and which one sounds best, and see if we can guess which one is the hardware. So let's go.
A little different than all the rest. I'm quite old-fashioned, wear a hat, sometimes play chess. And when I'm out, I'm looking for that vintage fling. But all complexions that I adore, so hard to find, these seem impossible to score. So I dream on to someday find that vintage love. A little different than all the rest. I'm quite old-fashioned, wear a hat, sometimes play chess. And when I'm out, I'm looking for that vintage fling. But all complexions that I adore, so hard to find, these seem impossible to score. So I dream on to someday find that vintage love. A little different than all the rest. I'm quite old-fashioned, wear a hat, sometimes play chess. And when I'm out, I'm looking for that vintage fling. But all complexions that I adore, so hard to find, these seem impossible to score. So I dream on to someday find that vintage love. A little different than all the rest. I'm quite old-fashioned, wear a hat, sometimes play chess. And when I'm out, I'm looking for that vintage fling. But all complexions that I adore, so hard to find, these seem impossible to score. So I dream on to someday find that vintage love. A little different than all the rest. I'm quite old-fashioned, wear a hat, sometimes play chess. And when I'm out, I'm looking for that vintage fling. But all complexions that I adore, so hard to find, these seem impossible to score. So I dream on to someday find that vintage love. A little different than all the rest. I'm quite old-fashioned, wear a hat, sometimes play chess. And when I'm out, I'm looking for that vintage fling.
Alright, cool. I'll give my input really quickly after just listening to these roughly on headphones. I don't necessarily have a favorite. I don't think there was any huge differences between them. But let's just show the tracks and see what we got. Ooh. Okay. Okay, so I said the stress sounded more like the hardware. So I got the arouser and the UAD version, right? Yeah, because I use the UAD one a lot. So that usually has a bit more presence to it, and that's what kind of got me to pick that specific one. As soon as I heard that presence in the vocal, I chose the Distressor, which is one of the reasons why I like it. Now, it may not be similar to the hardware version, but I just like that in the plugin. And then the actual hardware, so I said was the FG Stress, which is slightly odd. And then I said the Distressor sounded like the hardware. I thought sounded like the hardware, and then the FG Stress sounded like the Distressor. Interesting. This is very interesting. So this is why it's so weird when you do a blind test of these things. You know what I mean? Like you don't necessarily think that they're gonna be what you think they're gonna be. Interesting. Right. Okay. So now that we've done that, let's listen to them once again, and I'll just take off the blind test, and we can take a listen to them individually. So let's just play it dry. I'll just turn off the key.
A little different than all the rest. I'm quite old-fashioned where I had sometimes played chess. And when I'm out, I'm looking for that vintage fling. A little different
Turn on the key.
than all the rest. I'm quite old-fashioned where I had sometimes played chess. And when I'm out, I'm looking for that vintage fling. A little different than all the rest. I'm quite old-fashioned where I had sometimes played chess. And when I'm out, I'm looking for that vintage fling. A little different than all the rest. I'm quite old-fashioned where I had sometimes played chess. And when I'm out, I'm looking for that vintage fling. A little different than all the rest. I'm quite old-fashioned where I had sometimes played chess. And when I'm out, I'm looking for that vintage fling. A little different
So this
than
is the
all
hardware.
the rest. I'm quite old-fashioned where I had sometimes played chess. And when I'm out, I'm looking for that vintage fling.
And the reason you see a utility here that's slightly balanced, I've panned it slightly to the left. For some reason, when I ran it through the hardware units, because this is a stereo track, that's how Ableton does it. I've explained this in other videos. I had to use the stereo version of the Distressor, and I'm assuming of the Distressor. And then that kind of, for some reason, had shifted the stereo image, panned it slightly to the right. So I just compensated just to balance it out with the rest, basically. I just used the isotope imager, and it showed the stereo image slightly, not completely mono, but more to the right. And it's a stereo track, I guess, as well, because it's got the reverb included in the vocal. And if I monoed it, I tried, and it really messed up it felt like it had some like phasing issues. So yeah, that's why you see that. But all it's doing is just like so slightly panning 3 to the left. Let's compare the hardware to the Distressor, so the hardware print and to the Distressor, and be seen as we're doing this comparison. And I'll probably just end the video there. Let's take a listen.
A little different.
So this is the hardware.
Than all the rest. I'm quite old-fashioned where I had sometimes played chess. And when I'm out, I'm looking for that vintage fling. A little different than
And I'll
all
alternate.
the rest. I'm quite old-fashioned where I had sometimes played chess. And when I'm out,
The express is
I'm
slightly
looking
darker.
for that vintage fling.
So the hardware's got a bit more presence.
A little different than all the rest. I'm quite old-fashioned where I had sometimes played chess. And when I'm out, I'm looking.
Still pretty nice. I prefer this because I kind of felt like I was a little bit harsh in the last video for the Distressor. I liked it in this case. As I said in the beginning of the video, I actually liked it on this vocal track. Maybe vocals is the way to go with it, and not so much on the drums. I didn't like it on drums that much. So let's compare the hardware to the FG Stress now. And then we'll do it for each individual one, just see how they sound against the hardware.
A little different than all the rest. I'm quite old-fashioned where I had sometimes played chess. And when I'm out, I'm looking for that vintage fling. A little different than all the rest. I'm quite old-fashioned where I had sometimes played chess.
Yeah, the stress kind of smothered it there. Now that I know what I'm kind of listening for, my head exploded. Don't know what I was thinking there. Yeah, interesting. My ears must have been playing tricks on me. Or maybe I'll listen to it on monitors as well afterwards and see how that pairs. But yeah, see, in this case, now that I know what I'm listening out for when I do it like this, the hardware again has a little bit more presence. This really smears the sound. I don't like this one.
A little different than all the rest. I'm quite
Interesting though.
old-fashioned where I had sometimes played chess. And when I'm out, then all the rest. Then all the rest. Then all the rest.
Kind of like it chokes the transients out a little bit. Let's try it with the UAD.
A little different than all the rest. I'm quite old-fashioned where I had sometimes played chess. And when I'm out, I'm looking for that vintage fling. A little different than all the rest. I'm quite old-fashioned where I had sometimes played chess. And when I'm out, I'm looking for that vintage.
I feel like this is a little bit closer with the UAD version. Let's try it against the Arouser, which is made by Empirical Labs.
A little different than all the rest. I'm quite old-fashioned where I had sometimes played chess. And when I'm out, I'm looking for that vintage fling.
This is closer. This is definitely
a little different than all the rest. I'm quite old-fashioned where I had sometimes played chess. And when I'm out, I'm looking for that vintage fling.
All right, that's well, it's not surprising, but the Arouser is hell of a lot closer than all of them, I think, to the hardware. And then the FG Stress just isn't at all. And it's actually really blowing my mind right now as to why I put hardware for that. Maybe because it sounded a little bit warmer. I thought, right, okay, well, it's got a bit of that warmth to it, so it could be the hardware version, and it's less of that digital harshness. That was my original thought behind listening to it. Not that it was my favorite necessarily, because again, I don't really have a favorite. They're not that different, but now listening to it, that I know what the plugins and which one's the hardware, and now that I know what I'm listening to and when to listen for the changes. You can really hear it now. It's crazy what your ears do when you don't. And it just kind of puts into perspective, like, if you use these in the context of a mix, would you really be able to tell the difference? Like, oh, okay, like this drum part in this mix has had the Distressor on it, or that one's been run through the hardware, or the Arouser, or the FG Stress. Would you be able to hear it when a track's so soloed like this? The differences aren't necessarily as crazily audible. Which is kind of what I find against most compressors on the market. Not that the plugins sound better or the hardware sounds any better. That's a whole different debate. But they are different in a way, and the compression the way they handle compression, I think, with the transients is where the hardware really does win in terms of where we are with plugins. But I think in terms of capturing the mojo, I guess, of the hardware versions, the plugins do quite a good job at capturing that the tonal quality of them, but not so much handling the compression as well as, for example, you would as EQ plugins are doing with other EQ hardware. They're getting very close. I think compressor plugins are lacking a little bit behind, as we can hear like the hardware just sounds a lot more depthier, but transients are just keeps a lot of the transients, lets them through. These kind of smear them a little bit, and it just sounds a little bit more present and forward in through the headphones anyway. But yeah, that's where we're gonna leave off for today, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it was informative for you, and as always, let me know down in the comments below what you thought, if there's anything you'd like to see. I know Kive has released the new tape emulation, or a new tape plugin, and it's available through the Plugin Alliance. Again, the mega bundle or whatever that I have. So I'm gonna do a plugin shootout of that. Well, not so much, well, maybe a plugin shootout, but just, you know, taking a listen, running it through some audio and seeing what we think of it. I watched some videos on YouTube that Plugin Alliance released, and from what I heard, I kind of liked it, and it seems pretty interesting. So I thought we'd give it a go on this channel, and maybe pair it with other, you know, tape emulations on the market, a couple of UAD ones, the Slate Digital tape, a virtual tape machine. So yeah, that should be an interesting video. I'm not sure if Access Analog has a hardware tape machine that I can run it through. If they do, I'll do it. I'm pretty sure they used to, but I'm not sure if they have it anymore. Anyway, I'll double check, and if they have a hardware tape, I'll run it through some hardware tape, and we can compare it with, again, plugin versus hardware. We need to do more of those. Access Analog's got a bunch of hardware stuff, so if I can find the plugin equivalent, you know, of course, a plugin that's popular and quite mainstream in the market that a lot of people use, then yeah, we can give it a go. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. That's it for this video. Pop me a message if you have any questions, or let me know in comments down below. Hit that like button if you enjoyed it, or hit the dislike button. It's up to you guys. It's up to you guys what you want to do. Hit that subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Have a great day.